So Ubisoft have just kept drip feeding more and more information about AC Valhalla, and we got two fairly big interviews yesterday, and I think there's enough information there to warrant another video, just going over some of that, as well as what people seem to think is the game's release date. So first of all, let's talk about these two interviews Ash did yesterday. As of when this video comes out, I'll link these below if you want to read them in their entirety. The first one I'll cover here is from a news outlet called South African Gamer, and they ask Ash if this is going to be the final game with Layla as the modern day protagonist, and of course he doesn't answer that due to spoilers, but I really wouldn't be surprised at all, as the next gen is going to be a completely clean slate, so to speak. And Darby's mentioned doing something big with Valhalla's modern day that he wanted to do for years, so we could get kind of a grand conclusion to Layla's story, and hopefully that will link into the next game, as the modern days have been a bit inconsequential for years now. Next question is a far better one, asking about what inspired Ash to bring back base building via the settlements and why they're such a big part of the game. And he says, the journey of the Vikings into England was based on the idea of living and creating a home there. To give the full Viking experience, we felt it was key to deliver on this historical precedence. The settlement is Eivor's home and a reflection of their character as a leader. Investing in the settlement creates buildings and grows a community and social ecosystem. Eivor's journey will be underscored and mirrored by the journey of the settlement and its inhabitants. Each new building that is added to the settlement has a unique function and offers new gameplay opportunities. At its heart, the settlement is a narrative journey through a system, and all of this sounds incredible. During speculation for the game, I said I really wanted something like this back, knowing there was only a small chance of that happening, but the fact that it is, and it's so in-depth and has such a connection to the narrative and the characters of the game, is great, and one of the things I'm most hyped for about Valhalla, and I know that's the same for a ton of the community too. The next question, will Eivor be fucking hell, aggressive when pursuing romantic options? To which Ash assures no. I'm not really sure what this bloke quite wanted. If this is something else anyone else was interested in, I don't know. I just hope the pre-order sales don't plummet after this absolutely devastating news. Anyway, he gets asked about why the marketing has been exclusively with the male version, which isn't particularly fair given Ash isn't in control of Ubisoft's admittedly quite poor marketing, but he does let us know that they will showcase the female version at some point in the future. The next few are about combat, where Ash describes the combat as heavy and weighty and that kind of thing again, which we've heard before, so it seems like it's quite the shift from Odyssey and Origins, especially Odyssey, where no matter your build or what weapons you're using, it was very light and quick, and it seems to be very much the opposite of that. He mentions dual wielding again, but also the fact we can use hammers, which we didn't know. But the biggest takeaway from this for me is that Ash mentions there are going to be 25 enemy archetypes who are going to have a variety of weapons, including dual wielding, as well as their own armor and things like that. And he mentions how we can use our own strategies to fight them, and that's insane. The fact there's so many different variations on different types of enemies with plenty of different ways to fight them is going to do bits for making this game feel fresh even after doing a ton of combat, which is really great. Next, the interviewer asked if we'll get conflict across the world as well as territories and things like that, and Ash says, in the world of Norway and England there are many factions, clans and armies all vying for ownership of the land. This is a journey anchored in the history of the time period, so there is shifting of ownership as time moves forward, but it respects the historical precedent and the needs of the story. I must say I do really like the idea of power in certain places shifting as the plot progresses, and with this as well as the camps, it sounds like there's a real focus on trying to blend story and gameplay together, which is going to be great for the immersion. Anyway, there's another question about Norse mythology. Really knew this would be a part of the character's culture, but it's seemingly not going to be in things like boss fights, as Darby has said the game is going to be more grounded, although I wouldn't be surprised if we got an Origins type boss fight where we had a vision or something like that. Anyway, the final question in this specific interview asks about what horse we'll have, to which Ash says we're not ready yet to talk about mounts, and he undoubtedly is talking about the wolf mounts here, or that's the thing he's trying to avoid, I'm guessing, because these have been confirmed via the special edition bonuses of the game, and this seems even more likely as he describes them as mounts specifically as a sort of umbrella term when the interviewer specifically mentioned a horse. I'm pretty sure Ash knew what he was doing here anyway. The next interview we got was one from Kotaku. There's a little overlap with the last interview, some questions about mythology and things like that, so I'll avoid those. As I said, I'll link this in the description if you want to read it through for yourself. But anyway, the first question is in regards to the game's AI and if it was improved, to which Ash said everything is built on top of previous games and pushed much further. He also talks about the AI in the settlement and being able to grow relationships with these people and that they all have a purpose, and he says we also control the growing population. And I know I said it before, but the more I do hear about these settlements, the more hyped I get. These sound insane. They talked also about the game's structure. Ash made a point to mention that it was very different to the previous games, saying the idea is we want you to start in the settlement and go out into the world. In the settlement you might receive some kind of information about what's happening out in the world, whether it's contracts or people you've known in the past or new opportunities that have arrived. He also lets us know we can actually negotiate and avoid a fight if we like, which is great, as I feel all these things will make side missions far less repetitive than just going to a base and killing some people. In fact, it seems the opposite is true to some extent, as he says making peace is a goal and forging alliances is crucial despite having a lot of battles. The control won't change a ton, which we could have guessed, but apparently we'll get a tool wheel as it's worded, which if it's what I think it is, being like what we got for inventory management in the Ezio games, that'd be great, as I massively preferred that convenience to what we've gotten lately. Then in classic Kotaku fashion, we then get a reminder that gamers, we do hate women, because more people played as the empty Spartan man instead of the empty Spartan woman, which is a fairly robust argument to be fair. And then they try and like weirdly press Ash for decisions that were made by the marketing team in regards to Eivor, even though Ash has been perfectly comfortable talking about there being gender options, because you know, it wouldn't be Kotaku if there wasn't at least just a pinch of lackluster journalism in there, to which the PR asked them to move on. There's then some stuff about microtransactions in there, which is great, as that was a huge worry of me and a ton of the community after Odyssey. Ash says they've reflected a lot since Origins in terms of progression, and the game has more of a focus on power and skills, and he didn't want anyone hitting any kind of progression spike, as he calls it, something that would just inhibit you from progressing in the main narrative if you're so pleased, and that's brilliant. Although it was a huge issue in Odyssey for me, it was something of an issue in Origins too, and the fact we can just play a narrative at our own leisure is great, and the fact we're not faced with the Odyssey dilemma of doing hours of mindless side missions or selling your soul to Satan and buying Helix credits, that should be standard, but it's a big improvement for sure. We then get some questions about colonisation and the controversy around immigration of Vikings, and he talks about how they weren't just bad guys and they did try to implement themselves into a foreign culture as best they could in a lot of cases, and I have always liked when the series has tried to present certain groups or characters as more than just their stereotypes and go into the grey area and the philosophy of that, and if that connects to the ideologies of the Templars and Assassins, and it may well do with Darby, it probably will, that'd be insane, I'd really like that. The Kotaku interviewer then asked if the pandemic has hurt the game's development, and a lot of people thought there'd be a delay of this, but he says they've adapted to it well, and that's reflected in their latest earnings report, where they say they've only lost a few weeks worth of progress. And speaking of this report, it also tells us Valhalla has been the most viewed trailer of a Ubisoft game, pulling in around 200 million views online when you combine both official trailers and re-uploads all across the internet, which is insane. And if you look at the premiere trailers on the Ubisoft North America channel, you'll see in 2 years the Odyssey trailer has a little less than 5.5 million views, and in less than 3 weeks Valhalla has 8 million on the channel, as well as a like to dislike ratio of over 98%, while Odyssey's is far more disliked. I know a lot of older fans were drawn in by the involvement of Ash and Darby, although most casual fans won't really think about that, so I'm guessing this like jarring disconnect is in part due to the fact it's a cinematic, and also that it's far more grounded than Odyssey's very fantastical nature that tons of fans, both casual and hardcore, took a lot of issue with. Anyway, back onto this interview, they talk about the size of the world and the fact that a Ubi spokesperson called Julien Lafrie spoke to a French YouTuber and said the game would be bigger than Odyssey, which conflicts with reports from other people at Ubisoft who said that it would be smaller. And Ash said that he doesn't like to compare the size, saying he thinks it's meaningless, and said we're getting Norway, England and more, which we'll find out about soon, which is very interesting, and I really wouldn't worry about this. Despite me wanting a smaller world than Odyssey due to that one being big but totally vapid, there's a collection of studios on this, as well as a creative director who clearly cares about world density and immersion, and he goes on to talk about the world being handcrafted and that he wants every hour to feel worth it, and they strive for uniqueness, and all that's great. Best of all, he mentions there being bigger puzzles with intriguing truths behind them, and I don't want to get my hopes up, but it would be insane if these were glyphs, and they could be. I don't know how they'd be explained story-wise, but I do like puzzles, and Montreal 3 clearly do as well, judging by the few we've gotten in Black Flag and Origins. As for the interviews, that's pretty much it. Now I'll get to this supposed release date for the game that everyone is going on about. This one's from the AC subreddit. The user Assassin Crypt posted this, and it's an Amazon listing from Amazon Italy. He links the site here, the listing for the gold edition of the game. However, the date is now pushed back to December the 31st. The only evidence I can find of this is this one screenshot from the original post that says October the 15th with this watermark across it, and these are notorious for being fake listings on various sites, and this could well be fake too, but at the same time October 15th is a relatively reasonable date considering when we've got the games in the past, so I wouldn't be shocked if it was fake. I wouldn't be shocked if it was real. These things are very easy to fake, but at the same time, you know, these type of slip-ups with game listings do happen. But yeah, that's pretty much it for all the news today. Before I do go, I want to ask, what do you want from AC Valhalla? It can be something huge or the tiniest detail. I'm interested, and I want to put together a video of things just the general AC fans want. I asked for this in my last video, but since, you know, news has come out and I can do this now, I might as well ask here as well. I'm sorry this is so long. I'm looking at the timer now and it's on 11.5 minutes. I usually like for these to be half this length and try and get through everything as compactly as I can, and usually when I see a video this long about like news stuff, I assume that it's fairly drawn out, and it kind of is. Now I'm adding this on, but like with all the information, it's kind of just added up. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoy. If you did, maybe leave a like. If you didn't, maybe let me know why. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you all next time.